All right. Is my microphone working yet? No?
Better.
Better? All right. Hold on.
Talk loud, Naj.
How about that? Any
Yes.
better? That
Yes.
works? Okay. Folks, welcome to the live and interactive ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. Naj Ali Khan with you, ACSA's Senior Director of Marketing Communications. Megan Baer, ACSA Legislative Advocate. Also, I guess the only one who has a decent microphone today. We'll try and put Band-Aids and super glue to make my end of this show work. Megan, how are you?
Doing all right. I'm glad to have you here. I was a little scared I was going to have to do this by myself.
It would have been just fine. Look,
Oh, okay.
would have been just fine. Folks, we are going to talk about smartphone usage in California public schools in just a couple of moments. You may, in fact, you probably are likely aware that the governor put out a notice yesterday about smartphones. Well, we happen to be talking about them today. We've got an expert in the field from Los Angeles Unified School District who's going to talk a little bit about smartphones in schools, specifically in that district. You may be wondering, where is Edgar today? Edgar on vacation, a well-earned vacation, because Megan, as you know, he spent literally the last month on the road going to just about every region and charter meeting that was available. I will say that there is one thing that we do need to show because he was here on Thursday, and I'm only showing this because you gave me a hard time about this. We had our staff barbecue last Thursday. That's Edgar and I after winning a very competitive teams cornhole tournament. I know that there are several of our board members out there who are very competitive when it comes to cornhole, but figured we would show that to you, knowing full well that you gave me a number, Megan, that you expected to see that photo come up. I believe that number was 7. Welcome to number 1, Megan.
Edgar and Naj are a little bit competitive for those of you that know them. So when they won, I was like, okay, how many times is this going to play on lunch break? So we can all count.
That's right.
Track.
Yeah, we're at 1. We're at 1. All right. Folks, let's get to some news headlines. And I know, Megan, you were spending a lot of time this morning reading through trailer bills. We do have a number of laws that are coming through. Before we go into that, anything that has stuck out for you as far as trailer bills are concerned?
I'm almost done, but I had to do this broadcast. So every year, the legislature and the governor do what we term cleanup trailer bill. It's usually cleanup to the massive education budget trailer bill that happens. There's a number of cleanup items. I think there's a few pieces that we'll be highlighting in the future. Nothing too crazy, but some new expenditure deadlines for your expanded learning programs and things like that. So some important pieces, but we'll be sharing out at a later episode more what's in there.
Definitely more to come on that. And just want to take a moment because I know that, people are back from their summer vacations. There are a number of schools that are back in session this week. Lester Powell was our very first person on the chat. Gail Olson and Ellen Wheeler also there. So welcome to all of you. Let's talk, as I mentioned, about some of the new laws that go into effect. And I encourage you after the show to read this in EdSource because they gave a great rundown of some of these new laws that are going into place. It's a pretty exhaustive list, but just some of them. New laws include requirements on climate change instruction in schools and grades 1 through 12, menstrual products in elementary school, bathrooms, transitional kindergarten for those of you with students in the California State University system. AB 607 requires CSU campuses and community colleges to inform students and families about the upfront costs of course materials. I'm very excited about that because I like to know what my daughter is spending. And of course, we've talked a lot about this, but school boards won't be permitted to pass resolutions requiring teachers and staff notify parents if they believe a child is transgender. So again, go ahead and read some of that in EdSource after this show is finished. I do want to talk a little bit about what's happening in Oakland Unified because, Megan, we've talked about this on the show before. As you know, California often leads the country in tech, and in this case, electric vehicles. Now, Oakland Unified on the map with electric buses through a pilot program in the area. Oakland Unified is going fully electric.
Naj, we've lost you again.
Any better?
Yes, you're back.
Yes. Oh
Yes.
my goodness. See, I got a new piece of equipment in here and
Not working.
it's not working. It's not working well. Okay. Again, electric buses, they've converted 74 over. They're going to be charging some of that electricity back over to the state using the company Zoom's charging infrastructure. That company is based in Redwood City, which is in the Bay Area, and their goal is to add 10,000 bi-directional electronic buses across the U.S. I guarantee somebody's about to walk into my office to try and fix my microphone, but it gives me the opportunity again to just make mention of what the governor talked about yesterday in a statement about empowering school districts to restrict cell phone use on school campuses using data. The governor referred to Assembly Bill 272 when he signed it into law in 2019, granting school districts the authority to regulate cell phones during school hours. He also pointed out to districts like Santa Barbara Unified and Bullard High School in Fresno, both according to the news release, have seen positive impacts of limited smartphones on campus, and ACSA responded to the governor's message. You can read that on the ACSA Resource Hub. All right. It seems like this would be a perfect opportunity, Megan, for us to bring our guest on so I can stop talking and we can figure out what is going on with my microphone. Let's bring our guest to talk about smartphones in schools. Dr. Smita Malhotra is the Los Angeles Unified School District's medical director. Doctor, it's great to have you back on the show. Your third appearance here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. You are getting closer to that magic 5 number. So be ready, because then you get, then you're really part of the family when you get to number 5. Let me go back to June. LA Unified School Board passed a resolution banning phones and social media from its school sites. Why now? What's this timeline about?
So great question. Also, can't wait to have that number 5 episode appearance on your show.
Coming, trust me.
Yes, and it'll be a highlight of my life. LAUSD has had a policy since 2011 that doesn't allow student cell phone use in class, but it hasn't been consistently enforced across schools. Now, the policy being developed now will provide greater clarity to our schools and ensure consistent application and enforcement across our schools, while also continuing to prioritize the academic and socio-emotional needs of our students. And the resolution that guides the development of this policy calls for significant stakeholder engagement, including parents, students, and educators. And this will occur over the next few months. And then finally, we will recommend a policy in October to our board that will have further feedback and discussion, with implementation occurring at our school sites in January of 2025.
Dr. Malhotra, so how are parents in the school community responding so far to this process you're embarking on?
We're still gauging that response. As I said earlier, we will have significant stakeholder engagement. So that's a great opportunity for us to really take their voices into account and have them be a part of the implementation of this process.
Doctor, let me go ahead and remind everyone, if you have any questions for our guests, go ahead and put those into our chat, and we'll definitely tackle some of those at the end of our show. So what impact smartphones, social media use, what kind of impact do they have on student wellness? We've seen some of the data, but just from your lens of being at the district level, the medical director, what do you see?
Well, there's growing evidence that having access to smartphones and social media can harm mental health, which leads to higher rates of depression, anxiety, cyberbullying, even physical fights. In addition, research has shown that smartphones can lead to increased classroom distractions and lower academic performance, which we've seen. And this is an interesting stat. According to the US National Survey on Drug Use and Health, anxiety for those born after 1995 increased by 139% from 2010 to 2020, coinciding with the rise of smartphones and social media. And according to Common Sense Media, half of all teens are reporting feeling addicted to their phones. And 97% of 11 to 17-year-olds use their phones during the school day. And I'm sure that we've all seen this in real life. What we have seen is that frequent social media use can actually alter brain development for children who have developing brains. So in terms of impulse control and emotional regulation, it can also lead to body image issues, disordered eating behaviors, self-harm, poor sleep, and even addiction. So we can anticipate that limiting phone use during the school day will actually have positive effects on student mental health and wellness.
Wow, that's a long list. And the anxiety rates, oh my gosh, that explains a lot about my generation.
Right.
Anyway.
This generation, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a few bills that, if passed by the legislature and signed by the governor, would create accountability for social media platforms that are not taking down harmful content, including cyberbullying. How have you seen cyberbullying affect students in recent years, and what do you hope will change for them if legislation like this is passed?
Yeah, great question. So there was a Pew Research Center survey in 2022, and they found that 59% of US teens have personally experienced at least one of 6 types of abusive online behaviors, the most common type being online name calling. And furthermore, young people actually have a negative view on the way politicians are tackling the issue of cyberbullying. So 79% of teens say elected officials are only doing a fair or poor job of addressing this problem. Now, what we have seen is that cyberbullying can lead to higher rates of anxiety, depression, reduced feelings of self-worth, and increased suicide attempts. In fact, a Yale study found that victims of bullying are thought to be 2 to 9 times more likely to report suicidal thoughts than other children. So addressing this is an urgent issue, and our well-being of our children is literally at stake. So I'm glad that politicians are taking this seriously and working towards removing harmful content. I'm glad to see all these bills coming out addressing these issues, because this will directly affect the mental health of our youth in a positive way.
You know, Doctor, we had something that popped up here in our comment session from Gail Olson, longtime member, retired district student services director. And the question is, how are you planning to deal with extremely assertive parents saying, if there's an emergency, my child must have a phone to call me? Now, I'm the father of a high school senior, right? If something is going to happen at her school or she needs to get a hold of me, right? My inclination is that my daughter should have the ability to use her phone. How is LA Unified, going to deal with that kind of situation where there are families out there that say, wait a minute, if there's an emergency, I want my child to have a phone to be able to contact me?
Definitely understand that. And coming as a parent, also 2 kids in LAUSD, I understand that feeling. You want your child to always be able to contact you. What the research has shown actually is that in emergency situations, it is actually safer to not have all these people calling their parents. It can actually interfere with the appropriate emergency protocols. I think parents should be reassured that the school, the operations team, the administrators, they all have the ability to contact parents, to inform parents of the safety of their children. And so this actually won't hinder safety. It will actually help getting our protocols through in an appropriate way.
The U.S. Surgeon General made a statement earlier this summer that social media platforms should carry the same warning label as cigarettes. An interesting idea because of the harm to young people. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that that makes sense, or is it overlooking some of the positive things that come with these platforms?
So what's interesting is that the World Health Organization has said health warnings on tobacco packaging, especially those that combine text with pictures, are one of the most cost-effective and powerful ways to increase public awareness on serious health risks of tobacco and actually reduce consumption. Now, as we know, with the growing research, social media does pose a significant risk to mental health of youth. And so a warning label, coming from America's top doctor, may motivate parents to actively monitor their child's social media use. In fact, when asked if a warning from the Surgeon General would prompt them to limit or monitor their children's social media use, 76% of parents in one survey said yes. Now, I understand that with tobacco and cigarettes, there's no positive sides to them, right? But with social media, sometimes there is a benefit. There are many great things with social media. I understand that it can help you feel connected. It can help you share your creative interests. It can even help you find a sense of belonging. But more importantly, how you use it matters. So it's just as important to teach kids healthy social media boundaries, because eventually they will go out into the world with no restrictions on social media. And so it's not just about policies, but a warning like this may encourage parents to not only monitor their child's social media use, but to start family conversations on healthy boundaries with social media, which I think is just as important, because all of our children will go out into the world where they will not have restrictions. So learning that at a young age is just as important.
All right. So you just gave us a lot there. That 76%, that data point about, if you put one of those warning labels on, that 76% of parents would be more inclined to monitor social media. But then you just put something, and I know I have a really, really good suspicion here that the moment I say this, our comment section is going to actually get a few people to remark here. But you just said it's not just policy and it's not just a warning, but this should lead to family conversations where we talk about social media boundaries. And it's interesting that you say that, because I think that that's something that probably needs to happen more in schools with parents and their students, whether we're talking about social media or anything. These types of family conversations about boundaries seem to be, really important. So I guess my question would be, as other school districts are reviewing policies, looking into policies, whether it's, the school boards or superintendents or principals, whatever it is, what is your suggestion to them? What should be considered when we're putting these policies together? What are some of your thoughts on what school districts could be doing?
So you hit the nail on the head there, because I'm really passionate about this part. We can't just have implement policies like this without also implementing the supports that should go with it, right? So in LAUSD, we have so many mental health supports, such as the availability of telehealth mental health services in our schools. We have 800 psychiatric social workers throughout our district ready to support students. Because when you start restricting their social media use and their smartphone use, you will have those students that will have mental health breakdowns, right? How are you going to support that? We also at LAUSD have started to develop the LAUSD Digital Wellness Plan, where students will have a wellness plan in their record that identifies their trusted adults at school. There will be a universal screening for mental health and wellness, so that we can focus on preventive services in schools before they progress to treatment. Finally, it is an opportunity in schools to develop education on how to be a good digital citizen, boundaries with technology and media, so that they can develop these healthy habits at an early age before they go out into the world where they have no restrictions. The other thing that school districts, I think, should keep in mind is that when you're developing a policy, that you get the people on the front lines involved. So a work group with a cross-section of professionals and stakeholders. This includes having mental health professionals to weigh in on how to support the mental health of students that eventually will not have access to smartphones, as well as the instructional digital literacy. And finally, listening sessions with principals, school staff, parents, students to obtain their point of view and be a part of the steps to refining and implementing this policy. So buy-in is extremely important right from the beginning.
Let me ask this question because Mary Alice Owings, who's one of our longtime, great, very involved members, and this kind of goes right back to my question about my daughter, my senior in high school. If there's an emergency, I want her to be able to contact me. Mary Alice asked about Ed Code. One of the sections there, 48901.7. A pupil shall not be prohibited from possessing or using a smartphone under any of the following circumstances. Number one is in case of emergency or in response to a perceived threat or danger. There's some video that we showed about the phones being put into these pouches and locked, not at LA Unified, but in other places, right? And these are meant to keep the cell phones from being used, from being accessed. I don't know what the locking mechanism is, but if Ed Code says they should be able to use them, it kind of creates it's like two different things. We want to protect, but then if they need to be protected in the space of an emergency, they have to have some type of access. Is this really one of those things it's tough to argue one way or the other on it?
Yeah, so we keep in mind we're still developing this policy. So as we work through this, we can certainly develop the protocols and procedures of what happens in an emergency situation and a student requests their phone. So this is something that we are going to get our parent and student input on, and we want everyone to be involved as we develop that policy. So yeah, this is a policy that is still in development.
All right. Dr. Smita Malhotra from Los Angeles Unified School District, the medical director there. Doctor, it is great to have you on the show. I promise we're going to hit the 5-show threshold, so be ready.
Invite me back.
Contacting you soon. I'm telling you, it's going to be the greatest thing in the world. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Folks, let me just two things. One, apologies for my microphone. And let me bring up Megan, because while this interview was going on, and it's not my fault today when it comes to the audio, but while this was going on, either you spiked a football, Megan, or what just happened in your office?
I knocked over my lamp and it was really loud.
Okay. All right.
It's one of those days.
Just one of those days. See, this is what happens when the boss leaves and leaves all of us in charge. This is the kind of thing that happens. Folks, if you like what you've seen, there are a number of ways to follow us. And we do have 2 brand new podcasts that we want to tell you about. One is our Behind the Bills podcast. That is hosted by Yvonne Carrillo, our ACSA Senior Director of Policy and Governmental Relations. It is a great opportunity for you to learn about what's happening in the Capitol as it happens. Megan was the second guest on that show. It was fantastic. You get to see her here and hear her here, and then you get to hear her on that podcast. She was great. We've got QR codes for you. So if you want to scan those, you can go ahead and listen and subscribe. The other one is the ACSA Leadership Classroom. This is our opportunity to bring you a discussion about leadership from individuals outside of the world of public education. We're talking about tech leaders, athletic leaders. We run the gamut here. We've already had our first episode with tech entrepreneur and NBA owner Vivek Ranadive. This month, we are going to be talking with California State University Sacramento president, Dr. Luke Wood. It's an incredible podcast. Again, QR codes for you right there. You can go ahead and subscribe. And that next episode comes out in about a week or so. And folks, as I said, if you like what you've seen here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, despite my audio issues today and Megan throwing a lamp off of her desk, we invite you to like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube. When you do, you will get instant alerts when we're about to come on the air with breaking news or our regular Wednesday broadcast And of course, if you have great stories happening in your school districts, go ahead and send those to our EdCal editor. Your photos, your talking points, your news releases. Go ahead and send those up to Michelle Carl at ACSA.org. The audio issues, the tech issues, Megan, I promise you next time will be better for you.
Well, my favorite thing about this show is I learned what kind of parent you are today, Naj. You're one of those assertive parents. So
listen.
Good to know.
Don't think for a second if your kids weren't a little bit older, like in high school, you wouldn't have thought exactly the same thing that I did, right?
I mean, we'll see. I don't know. The social media stuff freaks me out. I mean, it's definitely it's a double-edged sword for sure. So
yeah, absolutely. Folks, thank you so much for joining us here on the live and interactive ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. Remember, we are live and interactive Wednesdays here on ACSA Facebook and ACSA YouTube. Have a great rest of the day and rest of the week. And we'll see you next week right here at 1 o'clock.